Hi, my name is Mark Caniglio and I'm the creator of Isadora. So today we're going to look at compositing and layering of images, both still images and moving images. Isadora has several blend modes that allow you to composite the images in different ways, and we're going to learn about that. We'll go through all the basics of that, and then I'll go a little bit further, getting into doing things with different kinds of arbitrarily shaped masks that allow you to do very complex masking. Yeah. So let's start with the basics, but first we have to remember we need to see our preview window so that we can see what's going on. I'm going to the output menu and I'm choosing show stages, and you do that and the preview window appears. I'm going to move it down here in the corner. Remember, if you were connected to a video projector and you have a new file, that's going to appear on the video projector. But if you're just working with your computer and no other external monitors or beamers are attached, you'll get the preview window. Yeah. So I'm going to bring in two movies. I'm going to drag this first movie into the scene editor. And we see that it's kind of this abstract, out of focus street scene. And then I've got another movie called Pupil, and that's, of course, of an eye, close up of an eye. I'll drag that in. And now you see both images, and they're kind of on top of each other. That's because the default blend mode for the projector actor is called additive. And that works just like if you had two physical projectors in a room and you shine them at a wall. The two images aren't going to block each other. They're just going to add up. They're going to sort of be added together on the white surface that you're looking at. And that's why we call this first blend mode additive. It just adds the two images. There is never really an idea of one image being in front or behind the other because they're just being added together. Yeah? So what I want to show you, though, is how to actually work with layering. And to do that, we need to change the blend mode. So if I go here to the projector, you'll see that if I click here on the dot to the left of the word blend, there are three blend modes. Additive, we already are working with that. Transparent, which is the one we'll work with in a moment, and opaque. Yeah? We're going to use the one, though, called transparent next. And you need to do that for both of these projectors. So I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to do the same thing and change this to transparent. And as soon as I did that with the second movie, we now see the eye completely obscuring the street scene. So why is that? How do we decide that? Well, unless you tell it differently and all of the layering is set to 0, you'll see that in a minute, Isadora decides how to draw by the way the actors are arranged in the screen. It goes from top to bottom. So right now, let's think about it. Here's the movie with the street scene, these two actors. It draws that first. But then it goes down and it draws the eye, and because the blend mode is now transparent, which actually means it's going to block it if it's fully opaque, then we can't see the street scene because the eye is drawn on top of it. You can see this really clearly if you simply drag the actors. Now watch, I'm going to take the street scene, which is above the pupil, and I'm going to drag it down, and watch what happens as soon as it goes below. Boom. Changes to the street scene because it's now lower in the scene than the eye. And if I put it back up here, it switches again, switches back to the way it was, right? So that's not really a really super reliable way to control layering. Probably you wouldn't want to do that because you might make a mistake. You're working really fast, you move some actors around, and suddenly the layering's wrong, right? But we have a way of controlling that in Isadora, and that's the next input below the blend mode is called layer. Now, if you're familiar with a drawing program like Photoshop, most of them have the notion of layers. And in Photoshop, it's like a stack, and the ones that are at the top are in front, and the ones that are at the bottom are behind, yeah? Well, Isadora's layers, the higher numbered ones are at the top of the stack, they're in front, and the lower numbered layers are behind. So let's think about this again. Right now, the street scene is behind the eye, right? But if I take this street scene projector, I click there and I type 1, because remember, the other one is 0. So if I type 1, now the street scene is in front of the eye because the eye is on layer 0 and the street scene is on layer 1. Once I've done that, moving those actors around doesn't do anything anymore. And that's probably the way you want to do it to be sure you're getting the layering you want. Same idea though, if I set the street scene back to 0, layer 0, now we see the eye again because it's drawing from top to bottom. But if I set the layer of the eye to -1, now the street scene's in front because -1 gets drawn first, that layer, which is the eye, and then layer 0, which is the street scene. So that's how you control the way in which you layer the images in Isadora with this layering. And I'm going to set now the layer of the eye to 1 and leave the layer of the street scene to 0 because I always want the eye to be in front. So now you may be saying, well, why do you call it transparent? It's like completely opaque. Well, the reason is that the next input, the intensity input, will sort of make that clear. And later when we get to masks, it'll become even more clear. But if I click on the intensity input of the eye and I start sliding that slider down, it starts to become more and more transparent until I get down to 0 and it's completely gone. And again, if I fade it back up here, increasing the intensity, it becomes more and more opaque until I get to 100 and it's completely opaque. To sort of emphasize this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the zoom on the eye to 75. So I'm going to make that smaller, right? So I hit 75 for the zoom of the projector actor connected to that eye, and I hit return, and now it got smaller, and you can always see now some of the street scene behind it. And again, if I take that intensity for the eye, I can fade that image in and out. Now, you can just do that manually if you want. Later, when we get into real-time interactive control, you may want to do that with an actor that is coming from a sensor or something, but we'll save that for another day. Okay? So there's the transparent blend mode. And then the final one we haven't talked about is opaque. So what does that one mean? Well, if I change the blend mode of the projector for the eye to opaque, and right now the intensity is 100%, it looks exactly the same. But if I take that intensity and start fading it out, now see what happens. It doesn't fade to become more transparent, it fades to black. So in other words, it's almost like there's a black background behind that eye, and as I lower the intensity, it becomes black. And when I get all the way to 0, it looks rather like we've cut a hole in the street scene, right? So that's a blend mode that may or may not be useful. It's probably the one that's used the least of the 3. But maybe you have a use for it. There are times when having it be opaque can be useful. So right now, I'm going to set this back to transparent, like it was, okay? That'll take us into the next section. But that, in that little section there, encapsulates the basics about layering, right? You've got the 3 blend modes, additive, transparent, and opaque. You've got the intensity to allow you to fade the image in and out, and you've got the layer input, which controls the order in which things are drawn. Yeah? Okay. Now for this next section, this is a question that comes up all the time when I show this, these features, is, well, what if I want to make some kind of a mask, some way to control the way the image, like something different than just a square? Well, the simplest way to do that, one way to do it, is using something called the shapes actor. So I want to show you that by itself so that you can see how it works. So I'm going to click to the right of this scene. Now everything went black because the scene is deactivated, right? It's no longer blue. And I'll go to the scenes menu and I'll say insert scene. So now I've got a second scene, a completely empty one, and I'm doing this just so that you can see what this actor does. So if I double click on the scene editor, that's a way of calling up an actor when you don't want to go through the toolbox if you know its name. I can just type the word shape. And there you see that it highlights the actor called Shapes. There's another one there that we're not going to use. But if I click on that, the actor appears in the scene. So there we go. There's a Shapes actor. And I want to add a projector to that. So I'm going to do that manually. We've been dragging media in to do this for us. But we can add a projector ourselves by simply double-clicking again to get this pop-up toolbox, typing PROJ, and then we select projector, okay? Whenever you want to connect two video actors, one nice shortcut is that you just can bump them together like this. And if you do that, the yellow line says, I'm about to hook these up. Now, if you drag it far enough away, the yellow line disappears. That's the way you can get out of it. But if you just bump them together and let go, now you can see the image that's coming from the shapes actor. So you see this square down here. Now we can control various parameters of this. The width, if I click on the width input with my mouse and I drag the mouse up or down, I can change the width. I can also do that with the slider, right? But remember, you can always change a number by clicking on it and just holding the mouse button down and dragging up or down. So there's the width, and I can do the same with the height, but I'm going to undo that so it's a square again. And then the other one I want to show you right now is the number of facets. That's how many edges it has, right? And if you increase that to a high number, it's basically a circle, right? So here, we've created a circle using the shapes actor, just a white circle on a black background, yeah? Okay, so that's what the shapes actor does. I just needed you to understand that before we go back and do the next step in the other scene. So let's go back. And here we are with our pupil and our street scene. So I'm going to make some room here between the two actors, the movie player and the projector, for the eye. And then I'm going to, again, double click to get the pop-up toolbox and type add. And the one I'm looking for here is add alpha channel. So if I click that, I now have this actor. Notice it has two inputs, a video input and a video out, but there's a second input, a second video input called mask. If I drag this up here and release the mouse button, now nothing happened yet, but that's because we don't have a mask. So we have to add one more actor now, and I type shapes and hit return, and now there's my shapes actor, and I'm going to go ahead right away and set the number of facets to 32 so it's circular, yeah? So imagine there's a white circle on a black background coming out of that shapes actor, and if I go and take that and connect it to the add alpha channel input, voila, we suddenly see not the entire picture but a circle, right? So what's happening? Well, the image from the shapes actor is acting as an alpha mask. Again, if you work with a drawing program, you've probably encountered alpha masks before. But the way those work typically is that wherever it's white, it's opaque. Where it's black, it's completely transparent. And if it's sort of gray, it's partially see-through, right? So, and you can see that if I start adjusting the shape like I did in the other scene, I can make it an oval and I can start moving it around. I could, for instance, let's set it back to 25%. It's not a bad size. But if I change the horizontal position, like so, I can put it right over the black part of the eye, right? So now we're using, and again, we can see the thumbnail. If I point the cursor over here at this, you see it there. There's the white circle, and the checkerboard tells you where it's transparent, right? So the white circle is where the image is going to be opaque, and otherwise you see through it and you see the background behind it, which is the other movie, yeah? Okay, that's one way to create a mask. But let's do something else. I'm going to disconnect the shapes actor. So now we're back to just seeing the full image. I've got this image here in this picture player, and I'm going to put that on layer 1. I'm just letting you see what it is. It's the word Isadora, but it gets more and more blurred as it goes to the right, okay? So I just drag that picture in from the media view, so we got a picture player and a projector, but to be able to see it, I had to set the layer up higher so it's in front of the other ones. But anyway, we're not going to use it for an image right now. I'm going to take the projector and delete it. So again, we've got this word, Isadora, getting more and more fuzzy on the right. That's what's coming out of the picture player. And I can click on that, connect it to the add alpha channel, and now you see that you see through to the eye, and it's sharp over here where the words were sharp in the original image, but over where it's blurry, it makes a much more blurry image, right? Okay? So now we're using quite a complicated shape. We've got this word. It could be anything you could draw or make any kind of an image. And we're using that as an alpha mask so that we can decide what parts of the image are transparent and what parts are opaque. Yeah. So again, we can maybe see this a little, it might be hard to see on the thumbnail. No, it's pretty good. You can see that's what the mask looks like. Again, it's white and it has those fuzzy edges on the A. And I think if you look down here in the image, you see that it's fuzzy along the edge here. In fact, if I set the zoom back to 100 to make it a little bit bigger, that will make it even more clear that it's fuzzy on that side of the image, yeah? So using the add alpha channel, you can use any image to create a mask so that some of the parts of the image are transparent and some are opaque. One last example with that, I'm going to actually delete this picture player one more time. And this time I'm going to make a movie player. So I double click on the scene editor, I type MOVI, I hit return, and now I've got a movie player. I've got this movie called Dancer, where it's a dancer in a light colored outfit on a black background. If I play that, okay, that movie's playing, I can take that into the mask input, and now you see that where the dancer is, we see through to the eye, but other than that, you're seeing where the image is black, where the background is black, you're seeing that street scene. It's all a bit 007, early 70s treatment there, but I think you get the idea that the point here is that it doesn't have to be a still image. Your mask can be a movie, and you can use a grayscale image, white to gray to black, to have a moving mask that you combine with another movie. That's possible, yeah? All right. I'm going to undo several steps there because I would prefer to have the Isadora image. Okay? All right. So that's how we can work with different images and the add alpha channel actor to be able to create masks. But there's one more thing that makes it in a way easier, except you have to know a little bit about other software to use this. So to show you this, I want to make a fresh scene. So I'm going to click to the right of this scene. Again, everything's inactive again. Go to the Scenes menu, choose Insert Scene again, and now I've got an empty scene, yeah? I'll work with the same thing I did before. I'm going to use that out of focus lights as the background. And remember, we have to now change the blend mode to transparent for this, and I'm going to set it. Well, that's a good feature to know. If you right-click on a number and there's an input and there's like a list of possibilities, you get a pop-up menu. So I'm going to hit -1. I could have just typed it, or I could have used the slider to go up or down. But just so you know, right-click or control-click on an input, you get a pop-up menu if there's a limited set of values. Yeah. So we are on -1, so that's going to be behind. And now, though, I'm going to bring out this picture that I have called Isadora Transparent PNG. And when I do that, and if I set that blend mode on the second projector to transparent, now it's just like what we had before with that image. Well, how does that work? Well, if I right-click on this item in the on the picture in the media view, and I say Reveal in Finder, let's just double-click that to open it in preview. Now you'll see that I've prepared this image. I did it in another program, a graphics program. This is a transparent PNG image, so it's got an alpha mask as part of the picture itself. It's already has that kind of what we did with the add alpha channel. So I have this picture. It's actually of a sunflower originally, but I did some fun things with the edges here and made them blurry, kind of what you saw before. So now this picture has the transparency built in, right? And you can do this in Photoshop or any other kind of imaging program that deals with alpha channels. You can make these masks and save it in a PNG format or other formats like TIFF, that's kind of old school, that use transparency. And then you can import those into Isadora. And once you do that, you don't need an add alpha channel anymore. You can just simply use the image itself because the transparency is built in. Again, the intensity input, I can fade that in or out like so, and that's something that you can also program to do automatically or as a real-time response, right? So that's how you do it with an image. And the final example is we can do the same thing with a movie. Now, I also prepared a movie in an editing program that has an alpha channel. Now, one thing you need to know about this, on Macintosh, there's only two formats really that are easy to use for this that have alpha masks. That's Apple ProRes 4444. That codec, that movie codec, allows you to store an alpha mask, or HAP alpha. There's a whole nother tutorial on codecs. You should take a look if you want to know more about that. But on Macintosh, Apple ProRes 4444 or HAP alpha. On Windows, you really have to use HAP alpha. The Windows movie formats, the native ones, don't really support alpha channels. So, all right. So I did that though. I prepared this movie, and it's called Isadora Transparency MOV. So I'll drag that in from the media view, and it's the same mask. I use the same mask for all of them. And if again, I go to the projector actor and I change the mode to transparent, now this time I clicked on it, I typed TR, and now you can see that the image is on top. Now, it's a little bit funny. I just realized that I used the same clip for the background, and so it looks rather the same. I think we need to change the movie. So let's make the background the iMovie instead. So I'm going to hit change that to movie 2 by clicking here, typing the number 2, and then hitting return. Why 2? Look at the media view over here. The second movie is number 2. The third movie is number 3, etc. That's how you identify these movies to the movie player. So again, on the top movie player, the one that's behind, I clicked here with my mouse, I typed 2, and I hit return. And now you see that the eye is behind that other image, yeah? So here, we've got a movie player that's playing a movie that has a burnt in or an embedded alpha mask, and that alpha mask is being used to render that so it's on top of and partially transparent, as you can see on the right, yeah? One last note about this. This is where, when you work with these transparent movies, this alpha mode input can become important. Almost every movie is rendered with what's called pre-multiplied black. It's very technical, you don't need to worry about it. But if the edges of your transparent movie don't look right, try changing this to straight. Now I just did that, and you can see the edges got kind of dark. That's incorrect, but because this movie is rendered as pre-multiplied black. But if you see these strange halos around your transparent edges in your movie, your alpha channel movie, change this setting and it may fix the problem, yeah? Because that's the other way that they can be rendered, is something called straight alpha. So that's it. That's our tutorial on compositing and layering. So you've learned about the blend modes that we have to offer, the layering input to change the order in which things are being drawn, and the intensity input to fade things in and take them out. And then we went a step further and used the Add Alpha channel so we can use any image, picture, or movie to make a mask in another picture or movie, so that you can make complicated shapes and different kinds of masks. And you can even use something like the Shapes Actor, which generates a shape to do that masking. And finally, we saw how we can take images from movies that have embedded alpha channels or pictures that have embedded alpha channels and use those directly in Isadora. So that's a lot that we just covered. Make sure to dig in and try some of this stuff and play with it. If you know how to make those kinds of transparent images or movies with your other software, do that and bring those in. But otherwise, try using the Add Alpha channel actor to combine a movie with a still picture that can function as a mask. I look forward to seeing you at the next tutorial.